Darian Cole beamed, standing at the threshold of his opulent ballroom, the room buzzing with elegantly dressed guests. Soft melodies drifted through the air, a prelude to the special occasion. Today marked the naming ceremony for his newborn son. Beside him stood Selena, his radiant wife, draped in a shimmering golden gown. The scene was a flurry of camera flashes, lively music, and black-clad waiters gliding through the crowd, balancing trays laden with exquisite delicacies and drinks. Darian felt an overwhelming sense of accomplishment. He had it all: wealth, influence, a stunning wife, and now, a son to carry on his legacy. Life, he thought, was perfect. Among the sea of uniformed waiters, a woman kept her head bowed low, almost invisible. Dressed in a simple black uniform, accented only by a white apron, her hands trembled subtly as she navigated through the room with a tray of drinks. Her name was Leora. This was not where she wanted to be, but financial needs had pushed her to accept the shift. Her agency had received a last-minute request from the event planner after a string of unexpected cancellations. Leora had taken the job without hesitation, seeing it as just another routine assignment. It wasn't until she stepped into the grand ballroom that she realized the magnitude of the event and, more importantly, the identity of the host. By then, turning back meant risking her livelihood. Darian, lost in his role as the perfect host, remained oblivious to her presence. He was busy greeting dignitaries, exchanging pleasantries, and shaking hands with well-wishers. His mother, T, sat regally in the front row, adorned with dazzling, expensive jewelry, her smile sharp and calculated as she surveyed the room. Selena proudly cradled the baby, presenting him to the admiring crowd. A pastor stood by, ready to bestow his blessings upon the child. Everything was unfolding precisely as planned. Darian raised his champagne flute, a signal for a toast. A chorus of cheers echoed through the ballroom. The ceremony was about to commence. But what no one anticipated was the storm that was brewing, hidden in plain sight. Before we continue, a quick hello to all our viewers around the globe. Drop your city or country in the comments below. Whether you are joining us from New York, sunny South Africa, snowy Canada, or vibrant Jamaica, we are thrilled to have you. And if you are enjoying this story, be sure to subscribe, give us a like, and share this video so even more people can join our community. Now, back to the unfolding drama. Leora retreated to a shadowy corner, trying to blend into the background. She quietly refilled glasses and collected empty plates, her heart pounding against her ribs like a trapped bird. Darian's voice, smooth and confident, carried across the room, each word a painful reminder of the past. It had been 7 years since she last saw him, 7 years since he walked away, 7 years since she lay alone in a sterile hospital bed, cradling a newborn he would never know. She fought back the tears that threatened to spill. She couldn't fall apart here. Not now. Suddenly, a woman in a striking red dress fixed her gaze on Leora. Her eyes narrowed, and then a gasp escaped her lips. She whispered something urgently to the man beside her, who followed her line of sight. Soon, others began to notice, their heads turning, whispers rippling through the room like a brushfire. Leora's name was spoken aloud. Is that Leora? Darian's ex-wife? What is she doing here, dressed as a waitress? The whispers grew louder, eclipsing the buzz about the baby. All eyes were now on Leora. Darian, sensing the shift in the atmosphere, turned to scan the room. His eyes landed on Leora, and for a moment, time seemed to freeze. His smile vanished, replaced by a look of stunned disbelief. The champagne flute nearly slipped from his grasp. Leora. It was really her. She looked different, older, perhaps a little worn, but undeniably her. His first wife. The woman he had married 8 years ago, the woman he had divorced and, in many ways, erased from his life. And there she was, serving drinks at his son's naming ceremony. He couldn't wrap his head around it. Selena, noticing Darian's sudden change in demeanor, followed his gaze. Her eyes locked onto Leora, and her expression hardened. She had heard stories about Leora, snippets of a past Darien had carefully edited. But seeing her in the flesh ignited a cold fury in her gut. She moved closer to Darien, her voice a sharp whisper. Who invited her? Darien shook his head, equally baffled. The event planner must have hired her through an agency. It had to be a bizarre coincidence. Or was it? A disturbing thought began to take root in his mind. Fandy, Darien's mother, also spotted Leora. Her face drained of color, then flushed red, then settled into an icy mask of fury. She rose slowly, her expensive jewelry clinking ominously. With deliberate, measured steps, she began to walk towards Leora, the silence of the room amplifying her every move. Leora saw her coming. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to disappear, but her feet felt rooted to the floor. Fandy stopped directly in front of her, her eyes raking Leora up and down with undisguised contempt. Her voice, amplified by the sudden silence, cut through the air. What are you doing here? This is a private event. You have no place here. Leora kept her gaze fixed on the floor, her voice barely a whisper. I was hired to work here. I didn't know whose event it was. I'm just doing my job. Please let me finish and leave. Fandy let out a harsh, bitter laugh. Doing your job? You used to be the wife of a billionaire. Now you're serving drinks like a common maid. How far you've fallen. A murmur swept through the room. Some guests shifted uncomfortably, while others leaned in, eager to witness the unfolding drama. Darien stood frozen, speechless, caught between his past and his present. Outside the ballroom, in a small, dimly lit room near the kitchen, the children of the waitstaff were huddled together. They had been instructed to stay quiet and out of sight. Among them was a small boy no older than 6. His name was Tafari. He had light brown skin and a mop of soft, curly hair. He sat by the window, silently watching the passing cars. He was a shy child, not one for idle chatter. He wore a clean but well-worn shirt and shorts. His mother had told him to wait there until she finished her work. Tafari stood up, his curiosity piqued. He tiptoed to the door and peeked into the hallway. He could hear music and voices, a symphony of sounds that drew him in. He wanted to see what was happening. He ventured into the hallway, keeping close to the wall, hoping to remain unnoticed. He reached the entrance of the ballroom and gasped. It was like stepping into a dream. So many people, so much food, so many lights, all shimmering and sparkling. It was like a palace, a world he had only ever seen in storybooks. Then his eyes found his mother. She was standing in the middle of the room, and a tall, imposing woman adorned with glittering jewelry was shouting at her. Tafari's chest tightened with fear. He wanted to rush to her defense, but he was paralyzed by apprehension. His gaze shifted to the side, and he saw a man standing in an expensive suit, staring intently at his mother. Tafari stared back at the man, a strange sense of familiarity washing over him. The man had the same eyes as Tafari, the same nose, the same shape of face. Tafari whispered to himself, barely audible, "Mommy, that man looks like me." He didn't intend for anyone to hear him, but a waiter standing nearby caught his words. The waiter looked at Tafari, then at Darien, then back at Tafari, his mouth agape. He grabbed the arm of another waiter and whispered urgently. The second waiter looked, then gasped, mirroring the first waiter's shock. The whispers spread like wildfire, this time faster and louder, fueled by the undeniable truth. People began pointing first at Tafari, then at Darien, then back at Tafari. The resemblance was impossible to ignore. It was as if a younger version of Darien stood before them. Leora heard the collective gasp and turned to see Tafari standing in the doorway. Her heart lurched in her chest. No, not now. She had told him to stay hidden. She rushed towards him, but Fandy blocked her path. Fandy looked at the boy, her face contorting in a mask of shock, then anger, then a chilling fear. She knew instantly, with a certainty that cut through her like a shard of ice, that this boy was Darien's son. She could see it in his face, the same face she had seen in Darien as a child, the same eyes, the same expression. Her carefully constructed world was crumbling around her. Darian walked slowly towards Tafari, his legs feeling heavy and unresponsive. He stared at the boy as if he were seeing a ghost. The resemblance was uncanny, undeniable. The same eyes, the same face shape, the same tentative expression Darian remembered seeing in the mirror as a child. His mind raced, trying to reconcile this reality with the life he thought he knew. He turned to Leora, his voice low and trembling. "Who is this?" Leora's eyes filled with tears. She tried to speak, but the words caught in her throat. Darian's voice rose, laced with desperation. "I asked you a question. Who is this boy?" Leora finally managed a whisper. "His name is Tafari. He is my son." Darian felt the room begin to spin around him. "Your son? How old is he?" Leora swallowed hard, the lump in her throat making it difficult to speak. "He is 6. Darian did the math in his head, the numbers swirling in his mind. 6 years old. That meant Leora had been pregnant when they divorced or shortly after. He looked at Tafari again, then back at Leora, the realization dawning on him. His voice cracked, barely audible. "Is he mine?" Leora nodded, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. "Yes, he is yours." The room erupted in chaos. Guests gasped, cameras flashed, Selena screamed. Thandi stumbled backward, her carefully constructed facade shattered. Darian stood frozen, staring at the son he never knew he had. Selena rushed forward, still holding the baby, her face contorted with rage. She screamed at Leora, "You're lying. You're trying to ruin this day. That boy is not his. You're just a desperate woman trying to get money." Leora shook her head, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands. "I'm not lying. I have proof. I have his birth certificate, hospital records, everything." Selena's face flushed crimson. She turned to Darian, her voice laced with venom. "Don't believe her. She's lying. Do a DNA test. Prove her wrong." Darian nodded slowly, the gears in his mind beginning to turn. "Yes, we'll do a DNA test." Leora agreed instantly, her gaze unwavering. "Fine, do the test. I have nothing to hide. I never wanted to come here. I never wanted to see you again, Darian. But now that we're here, you will know the truth. You will know what you did to me, what your mother did to me, what your new wife did to me." Darian frowned, confusion clouding his features. "What are you talking about? What did they do?" Leora's voice was steady now, fueled by years of suppressed anger. "They lied to you. They made you believe I was unfaithful. They hid my letters. They destroyed everything." Thandi stepped forward quickly, her eyes flashing with warning. "She's lying, Darian. Don't listen to her. She's just bitter because you moved on." Leora turned to Thandi, her eyes burning with righteous fury. "You told him I cheated. You told him I was seeing another man, but I never did. I was faithful. I loved him, but you hated me because I wasn't rich enough for your son. You wanted him to marry Selena, so you lied. You told him I was pregnant with another man's baby. You made him divorce me." Darian looked at his mother, his voice laced with a chilling coldness. "Is this true?" Thandi's face was ashen. She shook her head vehemently. "No, she's lying. She did cheat. I saw the messages. I saw the proof." Leora shouted, her voice echoing through the ballroom. "What messages? What proof? You made it all up. You hired someone to send fake messages to Darian's phone. You paid people to lie. You destroyed my life and you made me lose my husband." Darian looked bewildered and angry, torn between the two women. He didn't know what to believe. Everything he thought he knew was crumbling around him. Selena's hands were shaking uncontrollably. She held the baby tighter, her eyes wide with fear. "Don't listen to her, Darian. She's trying to confuse you. Our son is what matters. Today is his day. Let's finish the ceremony." But Darian wasn't listening anymore. His gaze was fixed on Tafari, who looked scared and confused, clutching his mother's hand tightly. Darian knelt down slowly, bringing himself to the boy's level. He looked into Tafari's eyes, searching for answers. "What is your name?" he asked softly. The boy whispered, "Tafari." Darian's throat tightened. That was his grandfather's name. Leora had named their son after his grandfather. Darian stood up, his face resolute. He turned to his assistant. Call Dr. Mensah. Tell him to come here immediately with a DNA testing kit. I want results today. His assistant nodded and hurried out of the room. The guests stood in uncomfortable silence, unsure of what to say or do. The pastor looked around nervously, the ceremony dissolving into chaos. Selena was now openly crying, her perfect world shattering before her eyes. Thandi sat down heavily in a chair, looking as if she had aged a decade in a matter of minutes. Leora and Tafari sat on a bench just outside the ballroom, seeking refuge from the storm raging inside. Tafari leaned against his mother, his young mind unable to comprehend the drama unfolding around him. He only knew that his mother was upset, and he held her hand tightly, offering silent comfort. The next 4 hours felt like an eternity. Darian paced restlessly back and forth in his office, unable to sit still. His mind was a whirlwind of questions, doubts, and regrets. If Tafari was really his son, why had Leora never told him? Why had she hidden the boy for 6 years? Why hadn't she fought for him? But then he remembered he had blocked her number, refused to see her, and blindly believed his mother's lies. He had married Selena just 3 months after the divorce, moving on without a second glance. Maybe Leora had tried. Maybe he had just refused to listen. Finally, Dr. Mensah returned, a somber expression on his face. He walked into Darian's office, holding a sealed folder. Darian stood up, his heart pounding in his chest. "Tell me," he demanded, his voice strained. The doctor opened the folder and handed Darian a single sheet of paper. "The results are clear. Tafari is your biological son. There is no doubt. The probability of paternity is 99. Darian's legs gave way, and he sank heavily into his chair, the paper trembling in his hands. The words blurred before his eyes, but the message was undeniable. Tafari was his son. He had a son, a 6-year-old son, and he had never known. Darian emerged from his office, his face pale and drawn. He walked slowly back to the ballroom, where everyone was waiting, their faces etched with anxiety. Leora stood up when she saw him, her eyes filled with a mixture of hope and apprehension. Darian held up the paper, his voice barely audible. "He is mine. Tafari is my son." Leora closed her eyes, tears streaming down her cheeks. But they weren't tears of joy. They were tears of pain, of years of suffering, of raising their son alone, without his father. Tafari looked up at his mother, his brow furrowed with concern. "Mommy, why are you crying?" Leora wiped her face, forcing a weak smile. "I'm okay, baby." Selena erupted in a furious outburst. She hurled a glass across the room, shattering it against the wall, the sound echoing through the tense silence. "No, this isn't fair. This is supposed to be my day, my son's day. Why is she here? Why is that boy here?" Darian turned to her, his voice cold and devoid of emotion. "Because he is my son, Selena, my real son, the son I should have known about, the son I should have raised." Selena's face contorted with anger. "What about our son? What about the baby I just gave you?" Darian looked at the baby, then back at Selena, his eyes narrowing with suspicion. A terrible thought began to form in his mind. He walked slowly towards Selena, examining the baby closely. The child's features seemed different, somehow too different. He didn't want to jump to conclusions, but as he compared the baby to Tafari's striking resemblance to himself, a deep uncertainty gnawed at his gut. Tafari looked exactly like him. This baby did not. Darian's voice was low and dangerous. "Selena, how old is the baby?" Selena's face drained of color. She stammered, "He's 2 weeks old. You know that?" Darian shook his head. "No, I want the exact date. When was he born?" Selena's hands trembled uncontrollably. She looked around for help, but Thandi averted her gaze. No one spoke. "The 15th, Selena whispered, her voice barely audible. Darian pulled out his phone and checked his calendar, counting back the days. His face turned rigid. That was only 28 weeks after their wedding night. No full-term pregnancy was that short. Selena, you were already pregnant before we got married. Selena burst into tears, her facade crumbling. No, Darian, please. I love you. Darian's voice rose, demanding an answer. Answer me. Was this baby conceived before we were together? Selena sobbed, unable to meet his gaze. She couldn't answer. Darian turned to Dr. Mensah, his voice sharp and commanding. Do another test. Test me and this baby right now. The doctor nodded and efficiently swabbed Darian's cheek again, then carefully swabbed the baby's cheek. Selena cried harder, begging Darian to stop. Please, Darian, don't do this. I love you. This will destroy everything. Darian remained unmoved, his face like stone. He instructed the doctor to rush the results, offering to pay extra for the expedited service. The doctor left quickly, leaving behind a silence thick with tension and anticipation. Selena collapsed into a chair, sobbing uncontrollably, her dreams of a perfect life dissolving into a nightmare. Thandi remained silent, her face an unreadable mask. While they waited, Leora spoke, her voice calm and steady. Darian, do you want to know the truth? The whole truth? Darian looked at her, his eyes pleading. Yes, tell me everything. Leora sat down, took a deep breath, and began to unravel the threads of the past. When I found out I was pregnant, I tried to tell you. I called you 50 times, but you had blocked my number. I sent letters to your office, but they were returned unopened. I came to your house, but security wouldn't let me in. I tried for months, but you had already moved on. You were with Selena. Your mother told me to disappear. Darian felt a wave of nausea wash over him. He turned to his mother, his voice filled with disbelief. Thandi, is this true? Thandi stood up, her voice defiant. I did what I had to do. Leora wasn't good for you. She was poor, had no education, no family connections. She would have held you back. Selena was a better match. She came from wealth and understood our world. I made the right choice for you. Darian's voice was laced with ice. You destroyed my family. You kept me from my son. You lied to me. You ruined my life. Thandi raised her chin, refusing to show any remorse. I did what any mother would do. Leora continued, her voice unwavering. After I gave birth, I struggled. I had no money, no job, no support. I worked 3 jobs just to feed Tafari. I cleaned houses, washed dishes, anything I could. I wanted to give him a good life. I never asked you for money because I knew you wouldn't believe me. I knew your mother would lie again, so I stayed silent. I raised him alone, giving him everything I could. And I told him his father was a good man who didn't know he existed. I never spoke badly of you. Darian felt his chest constrict with guilt and regret. He looked at Tafari, who was watching him intently, his young eyes filled with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Darian's eyes welled up with tears. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I should have listened. I should have tried harder. Tafari remained silent, clinging to his mother's hand. Darian turned to Thandi. His voice choked with emotion. How could you do this? How could you keep my son from me? Thandi's face was a mask of coldness. I did what I thought was best. If I could go back, I would do it again. Darian stared at her in disbelief, the foundation of his world crumbling around him. You're my mother, and you destroyed everything. Later that evening, Dr. Mensah returned, his face grim as he handed Darian the second set of test results. Darian opened the folder slowly, his hands trembling. He read the results, then read them again, as if trying to decipher a foreign language. The baby was not his. The probability of paternity was 0%. Darian looked up at Selena, his voice hollow and empty. He's not mine. Selena broke down completely, her sobs racking her body. I can explain. Please, let me explain. Darian shook his head. His eyes filled with a mixture of disgust and heartbreak. Get out. Take your baby and get out of my house. I never want to see you again. Selena stood up, tears streaming down her face. She reached out to touch Darian's arm, but he recoiled, flinching away from her touch. She pleaded, "Please, Darian. I made a mistake. I was scared. I thought I was pregnant with your baby, but the dates were wrong. I didn't mean to lie." Darian's voice was cold and unforgiving. "You lied to me. You made me celebrate a child that isn't mine. You ruined my life. Get out." Selena looked around for support but found none. Thandi averted her gaze, unable to meet her daughter-in-law's pleading eyes. The guests were long gone, leaving behind only the wreckage of a perfect illusion. Selena picked up the baby and walked out of the ballroom, her sobs echoing in the empty space. The door slammed shut behind her, leaving Darian alone in the ruins of his shattered life. His wife had betrayed him, his mother had lied to him, and he had lost 6 years with his real son. He looked at Leora, who was standing near the door, ready to leave, her face etched with weariness. Darian walked towards her, his voice filled with desperation and remorse. "Leora, please let me make this right. Let me be a part of his life. Let me be his father." Leora looked at him with sad eyes, her heart heavy with years of unanswered questions and unspoken grief. She shook her head slowly, her voice barely a whisper. "You had your chance, Darian. You believed lies and never questioned them. You never looked back. You let them pull you away from me." Darian sank to his knees, his body racked with sobs. Tears streamed down his face as he begged for forgiveness. "Please, I'm begging you. I didn't know. I was lied to. I was manipulated. I know I failed you. I know I failed him. But please give me a chance. Let me know my son. Let me be there for him." Leora looked down at him, her expression unreadable. She had dreamed of this moment for years, fantasizing about his repentance, his humiliation, his desperation. But now that it was happening, she felt no satisfaction, only a profound sense of sadness and exhaustion. She glanced at Tafari, who was watching his father cry, his young face etched with confusion. Leora spoke softly, her voice tinged with a hint of hope. "Tafari, do you want to know your father?" Tafari looked up at her, then back at Darian, his expression a mix of fear and curiosity. He nodded slowly, a hesitant gesture of acceptance. Leora took a deep breath, her heart pounding in her chest. "Then we'll try. But Darian, if you hurt him, if you disappoint him, if you walk away again, I will never forgive you." Darian nodded, his voice choked with emotion. "I won't. I promise I'll be the father he deserves. I'll spend the rest of my life making up for the years I missed." Leora helped him to his feet. Darian wiped his face, trying to regain his composure. He looked at Tafari, his heart overflowing with a mixture of love and regret. "Can I hug you?" he asked, his voice trembling. Tafari hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to respond. Then he nodded, a small gesture of trust. Darian knelt down and opened his arms. Tafari stepped forward slowly and wrapped his small arms around his father's neck. Darian held his son close, feeling the boy's small body against his chest, smelling his hair, feeling his heartbeat. Tears streamed down Darian's face as he whispered, "I'm so sorry I wasn't there. I'm so sorry I missed so much, but I'm here now, and I'll never leave again." Tafari hugged him back tentatively, not fully understanding the depth of the situation, but sensing something warm, something safe, something like family. Thandi watched from the corner, her face hardened with resentment and anger. She turned and walked towards the door, her steps echoing in the cavernous ballroom. Darian called after her, his voice tinged with sadness and disappointment. "Where are you going?" Thandi didn't turn around. "I'm leaving. You've made your choice. You've chosen her over me." Darian's voice was firm, resolute. "I've chosen my son. I've chosen the truth. You lied to me. You destroyed my family. I don't want to see you again." Thandi stopped, her back still to him. She turned slowly, her eyes cold and unforgiving. "You'll regret this," Darian heard, but he merely shook his head, a weary sadness washing over him. "The only thing I regret," he replied, his voice a low rumble, "is listening to you in the first place." Thandi turned sharply and walked away, the echo of her heels on the marble floor a sharp counterpoint to the lingering music. The heavy ballroom door swung shut behind her with a soft thud, sealing them in an almost unnerving silence. Leora, Darien, and Tafari stood together, isolated figures in the vast, empty space. The elaborate decorations still hung from the ornate ceiling, shimmering reminders of a celebration that had died stillborn. Lush floral arrangements, once vibrant and fragrant, now seemed to droop listlessly on the tables. The towering cake, a symbol of hope and unity, remained untouched, a monument to shattered dreams. The party was unequivocally over. The illusion was gone, replaced by the cold, hard reality of their circumstances. Everything in that instant had irrevocably changed. Darien turned to Leora, his eyes filled with a mixture of uncertainty and a plea for guidance. "What happens now, Leora? Where do we go from here?" Leora sighed deeply, a sound heavy with exhaustion and resignation. "I do not know, Darien. We take it one day at a time. That's all we can do." Darien nodded slowly, absorbing her words. A flicker of hope ignited within him. "Can I see him tomorrow? Can I see Tafari?" Leora hesitated, her gaze softening as she saw the genuine longing in Darien's eyes. After a moment, she nodded. "Yes, Darien. Tomorrow we will start again." And so, a new chapter began. Over the next few weeks, Darien became a constant presence in Tafari's life. He visited every day, his arms laden with gifts, brightly colored toys, age-appropriate books, and delicious treats. He took Tafari to the park, pushing him on the swings and building elaborate sandcastles. He played games, read aloud from his favorite stories, and, most importantly, simply listened. He listened to Tafari's endless stories, his innocent questions, his hopes and dreams. Slowly, tentatively, Tafari began to open up. The guarded expression in his eyes softened. He smiled more often, a genuine, heart-melting smile that reached his eyes. He laughed, a joyful sound that filled the void in Darien's soul. And then one day he started calling Darien Daddy. The word felt foreign at first, unfamiliar on Darien's tongue and in his ears. But as days turned into weeks, it began to feel right, natural. Darien was learning to be a father, stumbling and fumbling at times, but always learning. And Tafari, in turn, was learning to trust, to believe in the unwavering love that was finally being offered to him. Leora watched carefully, her heart cautiously optimistic. The scars of the past were still visible, but she allowed herself to feel a glimmer of hope for the future. Darien also sought to ease Leora's burden. He quietly paid off her mounting debts, relieving the financial pressure that had been weighing her down. He bought her a small, but comfortable house, a safe haven for her and Tafari. He provided money for Tafari's education, ensuring he had the best possible start in life. He didn't do it to manipulate her, to win her back with grand gestures. He did it because it was right, because he owed her a debt he could never truly repay, because he had failed her so profoundly. Leora accepted his help with a mixture of gratitude and cautious distance. She desperately needed it to give Tafari a stable life. But she made it unequivocally clear that a romantic reconciliation was out of the question. Too much had happened. Too much pain had been inflicted. Too much time had passed. Darien understood. He didn't push, he didn't plead. He simply focused on being the best father he could be. And for now, that was enough. One warm evening, Darien sat with Tafari on the porch of Leora's new house, watching the sun slowly descend, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. Tafari leaned against Darien's shoulder, his small body warm and comforting. He asked quietly, "Daddy, why weren't you there when I was born?" Darien's throat tightened. He felt a wave of guilt wash over him, threatening to drown him in its depths. He wanted to lie, to fabricate an excuse, to shield Tafari from the painful truth. But he knew he couldn't. He owed Tafari honesty. "Because I made a mistake, son," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I believed lies. I didn't try hard enough to find the truth. I failed you, Tafari, and I am so sorry." Tafari was quiet for a long moment, absorbing Darian's words. Then, in a voice filled with innocence and forgiveness, he said, "It's okay, Daddy. You're here now." Darian wrapped his arms around Tafari, hugging him tightly. Those simple words meant everything. He realized, with a profound sense of relief, that children forgive far easier than adults. They don't hold grudges. They don't dwell on the past. They simply crave love, attention, and a sense of security. Darian vowed to himself that he would never take that forgiveness for granted again. He would never miss another birthday, another school play, another bedtime story. He would be there always, no matter what. That was his promise, and he would keep it. Because Tafari was his son, his real son, the only family that truly mattered. Months drifted by, carried on the gentle breeze of newfound peace. Darian's life had undergone a radical transformation. It was simpler now, quieter, but infinitely more fulfilling. He stopped chasing the elusive mirage of wealth and status. He spent his days with Tafari, cherishing every moment. He learned to cook, burning more than a few pots in the process. He mastered the art of tying shoelaces, a skill he'd previously delegated to others. He learned to read bedtime stories with different voices, bringing characters to life for his captivated son. He became the father he should have been from the very beginning. Leora observed the transformation with a growing sense of wonder. She softened, the hard edges of her heart slowly melting away. They were no longer in love, the passion of their past extinguished by betrayal and pain. But they were friends, they were partners, united in their unwavering commitment to raising their son. And that was enough. In fact, it was more than enough. One sunny afternoon, Tafari came bounding home from school, clutching a drawing in his hand. It was a simple picture of three people holding hands. A woman, a man, and a boy in the middle. He had carefully labeled them, Mommy, Daddy, and me. He showed it to Darian with a proud smile, his eyes sparkling with joy. "Look what I made, Daddy." Darian's eyes welled up with tears. He knelt down and hugged Tafari tightly, his heart overflowing with love. "It's beautiful, Tafari. It's absolutely perfect." Tafari grinned, his face radiant with happiness. "Can we put it on the fridge?" Darian nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, Tafari, we will put it right in the center so everyone can see. So everyone knows we are a family." Darian never spoke to his mother again. Thandi attempted to reach out once, sending a carefully worded letter filled with apologies and justifications. Darian burned it without reading a single word. He didn't need her apologies, he didn't need her excuses. She had made her choice and he had made his. Some wounds run too deep to heal. Some betrayals are simply too profound to forgive. Darian focused on the people who truly mattered in his life. Leora, Tafari, his son, his family. That was all he needed, that was all that mattered. Everything else was just noise, a distraction from the quiet joy he had found. Selena disappeared from their lives. Darian heard rumors that she had married someone else, someone richer, someone older. He didn't care. She was a relic of his past, a mistake, a valuable lesson learned. He didn't wish her harm, but he didn't wish her well either. He simply didn't think about her. His life had moved on, his heart had moved on. He had found something real, something true, something worth protecting, and he would never let it go again. Not for money, not for status, not for anything. Years later, Tafari had blossomed into a strong, kind, intelligent young man. He excelled in school, made genuine friendships, and enthusiastically participated in sports. He laughed often, a carefree sound that echoed through their home. He knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that he was loved by his mother, by his father, by both of them. He never felt torn between them because they worked together, they respected each other, and they always put him first. And that made all the difference. Tafari was happy, and that was all Darian had ever wanted. To see his son happy, to see him whole, to see him loved. On Tafari's 13th birthday, Darian gave him a sealed letter. He instructed him to read it when he was older, when he felt ready to understand the complexities of the past. The letter explained everything. The truth, the lies, the mistakes, the regrets, the lessons learned. Darian wanted his son to know the full story, not to blame anyone, but to understand, to learn, to grow, and to avoid repeating the same mistakes. Tafari promised to read it when he was ready. He hugged his father tightly, his voice filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Daddy, for everything, for being here, for loving me." Darian held him close, his heart overflowing with love. "Thank you, Tafari, for forgiving me." Leora watched them from the kitchen window, a soft smile gracing her lips. She had forgiven Darian, too. Not because he necessarily deserved it, but because holding on to anger only served to poison her own soul. She had let go of the bitterness. She had moved on. She had built a good life, a peaceful life, a life filled with love. She had her son, she had her dignity, and she had her strength. And that was enough. It was more than enough. She had survived, she had thrived, and she had taught her son what real love looked like, what real strength looked like, and what real forgiveness looked like. 3 weeks after Tafari's birthday, something unexpected happened. Darian received a somber phone call from a lawyer. The lawyer informed him that Thandi had passed away. She had died peacefully in her sleep. The funeral would be held in 5 days. Darian sat in stunned silence after the call, the weight of the news pressing down on him. He didn't know how to feel. His mother had hurt him deeply. She had destroyed his family, but she was still his mother. He felt strangely empty. Not sad, not relieved, just empty. He called Leora, his voice subdued. He told her the news. She listened quietly, offering no judgment, just a silent presence. Then, to his surprise, she said, "You should go to the funeral, Darian. She was still your mother." Darian was taken aback. "After everything she did to you, you want me to go?" Leora's voice remained calm and steady. "Yes, Darian. Not for her. For you. So you can close that chapter so you don't carry regret." Darian pondered her words, considering the wisdom behind them. He realized that Leora was right. He needed closure. He needed to find a way to say goodbye, to release the lingering resentment that had been festering within him. He agreed to go. He asked Leora if she would accompany him, needing her strength and support. She hesitated for a moment, then said yes. Not for Thandi but for Darian and for Tafari. Because family was complicated, because forgiveness was a long and arduous journey, and because sometimes you had to face the past to truly move forward. The day of the funeral arrived, gray and overcast, mirroring the somber mood. It was a small, intimate ceremony. Thandi, in her relentless pursuit of wealth and status, had pushed away most of her friends and family over the years. Only a handful of people were in attendance. Darian stood at the front, his arm around Tafari, who held his hand tightly. Leora stood on the other side, a silent pillar of support. The pastor spoke about forgiveness and finding peace in the afterlife. Darian stared at the polished casket, his mind swirling with conflicting emotions. He thought about his mother, about the choices she had made, about the pain she had inflicted. He also thought about the good times, the memories of his childhood when she had held him close, when she had believed in him before the allure of money and pride had consumed her. After the service, Darian walked slowly toward the casket. He placed his hand on the cool, smooth surface. He whispered, "I forgive you, Mama. I don't understand why you did what you did. I don't agree with it, but I forgive you because holding on to anger won't bring back the years I lost. It won't change what happened. I forgive you, and I hope you have finally found peace." He stepped back, tears streaming down his face, a mixture of grief and release. Tafari squeezed his hand, offering silent comfort. Leora placed a hand on his shoulder, a gesture of unwavering support. They stood together, a family supporting each other, even in pain, even in loss. As they turned to leave the cemetery, a woman approached them. She was elderly, her face etched with wrinkles, but her eyes held a gentle kindness. She introduced herself as Thandi's sister, Aunt Nima. Darian barely remembered her, as Thandi had severed ties with most of her family years ago. Aunt Nima embraced Darian, her voice filled with sorrow. "I am so sorry for everything, Darian. I tried to talk to your mother many times. I told her what she did was wrong, but she wouldn't listen. She was proud, too proud for her own good. Darian nodded, his throat tight with emotion. I know, Aunt Nima. Aunt Nima's gaze shifted to Tafari, her eyes softening. Is this your son, Darian? Darian smiled, his arm tightening around Tafari. Yes, Aunt Nima, this is Tafari, my son. Aunt Nima's eyes filled with tears. He looks just like you when you were young. Thandi showed me pictures once, before she became so bitter. She was so proud of you then. I wish she had stayed that way. Darian felt a lump forming in his throat. Aunt Nima continued, her voice tinged with sadness. Your mother wasn't always like this. When she was young, she was kind, full of dreams. But life hardened her. She lost your father too early. She struggled to build wealth. She became obsessed with status, with control. She forgot what truly mattered. And in the end, she died alone. Don't make the same mistake, Darian. Hold on to your family. Cherish them above all else. Darian looked at Leora and Tafari, his heart overflowing with love. I will, Aunt Nima, I promise. Aunt Nima smiled, her gaze filled with warmth. She handed Darian a sealed envelope. Your mother left this for you. She gave it to me a year ago. She said to give it to you if anything happened to her. Darian took the envelope, his fingers trembling slightly. He didn't open it, not yet. He thanked Aunt Nima for her kindness. She hugged him again. Then she hugged Leora and Tafari, telling them they were a beautiful family. Then she turned and walked away, leaving them standing alone in the fading light. Darian held the envelope tightly in his hand, his mind racing. He wondered what was inside, what secrets it held. He wasn't sure he wanted to know. That night, after Tafari had gone to bed, Darian sat alone in his living room, the silence punctuated only by the gentle ticking of the clock. He stared at the envelope, a sense of trepidation washing over him. Finally, with a deep breath, he opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter, the familiar slant of his mother's handwriting instantly recognizable. He began to read, his heart pounding in his chest. Darian, the letter began. If you are reading this, then I am gone. I don't expect you to forgive me, Darian. I don't deserve it. I know what I did. I destroyed your family. I lied to you. I kept your son from you. And I have lived with that guilt every day since. A wave of emotion washed over him. A mixture of anger, sadness, and a strange sense of vindication. The letter continued, the words blurring through his tears. I told myself I did it for your own good, that I was protecting you from a life of hardship. But that was a lie, Darian. The truth is, I did it because I was afraid. Afraid of losing control, afraid of being poor again, afraid of watching you struggle like I did. Leora was a good woman, but she reminded me of everything I had tried so hard to escape. Poverty, struggle, uncertainty. Selena was safe, wealthy, predictable. I thought she would protect you. I was wrong. I destroyed your happiness, Darian. I destroyed your chance at real love. I destroyed your son's childhood. And for that, I am truly sorry. I know that sorry isn't enough, but it's all I have left to offer. Please, Darian, don't let my mistakes poison your heart. Love your son. Be there for him. Be the parent I failed to be. Darian's hands shook as he read the final words, tears streaming down his face, soaking the paper. His mother had known. She had understood the magnitude of her actions. But pride, that relentless and destructive force, had kept her from expressing it while she was alive. She had waited until death to finally be honest. Darian felt a surge of anger, but also a profound sense of sadness. His mother had been broken, damaged by life, and she had passed that damage on to him. But he had a choice, he realized. He could break the cycle, he could be different. He could love without condition. He could forgive without bitterness. He could be the father his mother never allowed him to be. That was his power, that was his choice. The next morning, Darian told Leora about the letter, sharing his mother's final words. She listened carefully, her gaze unwavering. When he had finished, she was quiet for a long time, her expression thoughtful. Finally, she spoke, her voice soft but firm. Your mother was human, Darian, and humans make terrible mistakes. But she gave you something important in the end. Awareness. Now you know the truth, now you can choose to be different. Darian nodded, his heart filled with a newfound sense of resolve. You're right, Leora. I won't let her mistakes define me. I won't let bitterness win. I will love my son. I will be present in his life, and I will always be honest with him. That's my promise. Leora smiled, her eyes filled with warmth. That's all any child needs, Darian. Presence, honesty, and unconditional love. 2 years passed, filled with the quiet joys and everyday challenges of raising a child. Tafari was 15 now, a young man on the cusp of adulthood. He had grown tall and strong. His voice had deepened, and he looked more like Darian every day. He was doing well in school, he had a close circle of friends, he excelled at football, and he laughed often, his happiness radiating outwards. One evening, as they sat together watching television, Tafari turned to Darian with a question. Daddy, what happened to Selena's baby? Darian was caught off guard. His thoughts momentarily transported back to that tumultuous time in his life. He answered honestly, I don't know, son. Selena took him and left. I never heard from her again. I hope the child is okay. Tafari, I hope he has a good life. Even though he wasn't mine, he was still innocent. Tafari nodded thoughtfully. Do you ever think about him? Darian paused, considering the question carefully. Sometimes, Tafari. I wonder if he knows the truth. I wonder if Selena told him. I wonder if his real father is in his life. But mostly, I just hope he's loved. Every child deserves that, Tafari. Tafari was quiet for a moment, absorbing his father's words. Then he reached out and squeezed Darian's hand. You're a good man, Daddy. Even after everything, you don't hate, you just love. Darian's eyes welled up with tears. He wrapped his arms around his son, hugging him tightly. That's because I've learned from my mistakes, Tafari. And because I have you. You make me want to be a better man every single day. One sunny Saturday afternoon, Darian and Tafari went to the local market to buy groceries. Tafari loved helping his father cook, and they often spent weekends experimenting with new recipes. As they walked through the bustling aisles, Darian heard a familiar voice call his name. He turned and saw Selena. She looked older, tired, her face bearing the marks of a difficult life. She was with a young boy, about 8 years old, who had light skin and soft features. It was her son, the baby from the naming ceremony, now a young boy. Selena saw Darian, her face drained of color. She froze, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and apprehension. Darian didn't know what to do, his heart pounding in his chest. Tafari noticed the change in his father's demeanor. He whispered, Daddy, is that her? Darian nodded slowly. Yes, Tafari, that's her. Selena gathered her courage and walked toward them, her steps hesitant. Her voice was shaky as she spoke. Darian, hello? Darian nodded politely, forcing himself to remain calm. Selena, how are you? Selena looked down, avoiding his gaze. I'm okay, getting by. She glanced at Tafari, her eyes filled with a flicker of sadness. Is this your son, Darian? Darian put his arm protectively around Tafari. Yes, Selena, this is Tafari. Selena's eyes welled up with tears. He's beautiful, Darian. He looks just like you. Darian didn't respond, his expression unreadable. Selena turned to the young boy beside her and gently pushed him forward. This is Juma, my son. Juma looked up at Darian, his expression curious but shy. Darian smiled at him, his voice warm and welcoming. Hello, Juma. It's nice to meet you. Selena's voice cracked, her composure crumbling. Darian, I'm so sorry for everything. I lied to you, I hurt you, I destroyed your life. I was selfish, I was desperate. I thought marrying you would fix everything, but I only made things worse. I've regretted it every single day since. Darian looked at her, his heart filled with a mixture of pity and understanding. He saw the genuine pain in her eyes, the weight of her regret etched on her face. He took a deep breath, releasing the last vestiges of anger and resentment. "I forgive you, Selena," he said, his voice calm and steady. "What you did was wrong, but holding on to anger won't change the past. I've moved on, Selena. I have my son, I have my life, and I'm happy. I hope you find peace too. And I hope Juma has a good life." Selena wiped away her tears, her voice filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Darian. That means more than you know." She paused, her expression hesitant. "His father isn't in the picture. I'm raising him alone. It's hard, but I'm trying. I'm working, I'm doing my best." Darian nodded, acknowledging her struggle. "That's all you can do, Selena. Be there for him, love him. That's what matters." Selena smiled weakly, a flicker of her former self shining through. "You always had a good heart, Darian. I didn't deserve you." Darian didn't argue. He simply said, "Take care of yourself, Selena, and take care of your son." Selena nodded, her eyes filled with unspoken emotions. She took Juma's hand and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Darian watched her go, feeling nothing but a profound sense of peace. No anger, no regret, just acceptance. Tafari looked up at his father, his eyes filled with curiosity and admiration. "You forgave her, Daddy, even after everything she did?" Darian nodded, smiling gently at his son. "Yes, Tafari, because forgiveness isn't for them, it's for me. It frees me, it allows me to move forward without carrying hate." Tafari smiled, his heart overflowing with love for his father. "You're teaching me so much, Daddy." Darian ruffled his hair, his eyes filled with pride. "And you're teaching me too, son. You teach me every day what unconditional love looks like." They continued their shopping, father and son together, happy, whole and complete. The past was behind them, the future was ahead, and they were ready to face it together. On Tafari's 16th birthday, he finally opened the letter that Darian had given him 3 years before. He sat alone in his room, his heart pounding in his chest, and read every word, absorbing the weight of his parents' past. He learned about the lies, the betrayal, the pain, and the loss. He cried, not from sadness or anger, but from an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Because despite everything, his parents had chosen love, they had chosen him. They had built a family from the ruins of betrayal, and that was the most powerful thing he had ever known. He went downstairs, his eyes filled with tears, and hugged both his parents tightly, his voice choked with emotion. "Thank you for everything," he whispered. "Thank you for fighting, for forgiving, and for loving me. I will never forget this. I will carry this with me forever." Darian and Leora looked at each other, their hearts overflowing with love and pride. They had done it. They had raised a strong, kind, and wise young man, despite the lies, despite the pain, despite the betrayal. They had won, not because they got back together, not because they became rich or famous, but because they had raised their son with love, with truth, and with integrity. And that was the greatest victory of all. Tafari was their legacy, and he would carry their lessons forward into the world, into his own family one day, into the future, ensuring that the cycle of love would continue. Years later, Tafari graduated from university with honors. He became a teacher, dedicating his life to helping children who came from broken families, children who felt lost and alone, children who needed hope. He shared his story with them, telling them about his father who had missed the first 6 years of his life, about his mother who had struggled alone, about forgiveness, about second chances, and about the transformative power of truth. The children listened, captivated by his words. They cried, they laughed, and they felt a glimmer of hope, because if Tafari could overcome his challenges, so could they. And that was his gift to the world, the gift his parents had given him, the gift of resilience, of forgiveness, and of unconditional love. Darian attended Tafari's graduation ceremony, sitting proudly in the front row, tears streaming down his face. He was so proud, so grateful, so blessed to witness his son's triumph. Leora sat beside him, their shoulders touching, a silent acknowledgement of the bond that would forever connect them. They were not together as a couple, but they were family, forever bound by their shared love for Tafari. When Tafari walked across the stage to receive his diploma, both parents stood and cheered, their voices filled with joy and pride. Tafari looked at them, his face radiant with happiness, and pointed at them, mouthing the words, "I love you." And in that moment, Darian knew that he had lost everything on that fateful day at the naming ceremony years ago. But in the process, he had gained the only thing that truly mattered: his son, his family, and his truth. And that was worth more than all the wealth in the world. The moral of this story is simple yet profound. Lies may build empires, but only truth builds families. Money and power mean nothing if you lose the people who truly love you. Forgiveness is not weakness, it is strength. And family is not just about blood. It is about presence, about sacrifice, and about showing up, even when it is hard, even when it hurts. Darian lost everything he thought mattered, but in the end, he found the one thing that truly did: his son, his family, and his truth. And that was worth more than all the wealth in the world. Thank you.